Okay, I want to start with a visual that I think perfectly captures why we are here today. Imagine you are looking at a screen filled with absolute static, just random, chaotic white noise. It's a mess. There's, zero information there. But then you start to see something shift. The static doesn't just fade, it starts to swirl almost like it's organizing itself. Shadows emerge from the snow, then edges, then textures. And after a few moments, you aren't looking at static anymore. You are looking at a high-resolution, photorealistic image of a golden retriever running through a park.
It's the closest thing we have in computer science to, well, alchemy, creating something from nothing, or rather creating order from total entropy.
Exactly. And we aren't just talking about a cool visual trick. We are diving into the paper that arguably flipped the table on the entire field of generative AI. We are looking at Denoising Diffusion Probabilistic Models by Ajay Jain and Abbeel from UC Berkeley.
This is the seminal work. I mean, before this paper landed, if you were a developer trying to generate images, you were likely banging your head against the wall with GANs, Generative Adversarial Networks.
Which brings up the context we need to set. I've trained jams before. It's miserable. You have one network trying to fake an image, another trying to catch the fake, and you're just hoping they don't get stuck in this endless loop. It's so unstable.
It is notoriously unstable. You deal with mode collapse, where the model just decides to output the same shoe or face over and over because it's the only thing that reliably fools the discriminator. What Ho, Jain, and Abbeel proposed was a complete departure from that adversarial game theory. They went back to physics.
Right.
Specifically, nonequilibrium thermodynamics.
Which sounds incredibly intimidating, but the intuition is actually surprisingly grounded. The paper basically says that to build the ultimate creative machine, you first have to understand how to destroy data perfectly.
That's the core thesis. It is so much easier to mathematically describe how to break something than how to build it. So the thinking was, if we can master the destruction, maybe we can learn to reverse it.
So let's get into the physics of this destruction. The paper uses a diffusion process as the foundation. The classic analogy is ink and water, right?
Right. Imagine a single drop of ink falling into a glass of clear water. That drop is your data distribution. It's dense, it's structured, it has information. As time passes, the ink diffuses, it spreads out. Eventually, the water is just a uniform, light gray, maximum entropy. You've lost all the structure of the drop.
And in the context of this paper, that gray water is Gaussian noise.
Precisely. The authors asked a question that sounds simple, but is, mathematically incredibly complex. If we recorded that ink spreading frame by frame, could we train a model to play the video backward? Could we start with the gray water and mathematically force the ink molecules back into that perfect drop?
So to do that, you first need a very rigorous way of destroying the image. You can't just throw noise at it randomly. You need a schedule. This is what they call the forward process.
Think of the forward process as a fixed, non-learnable Markov chain. We take a clean image, let's call it x0, and we add a tiny bit of Gaussian noise to get x1. Then we add a little more to get x2. We do this for t-time steps, usually about 1,000 steps in this paper.
And this is deterministic, right? The model isn't learning anything here.
No, not at all. This is hard-coded. We define a variance schedule. The paper calls it beta. It dictates exactly how much noise is added at each step. By the time you reach step 1,000, the original image is mathematically obliterated.
Wow.
It is indistinguishable from pure Gaussian noise.
Okay, so I want to push on this because it feels so counterintuitive. We usually train AI to find patterns. Here, we are explicitly burying the pattern under 1,000 layers of, digital dirt. Why is a data set of destroyed images useful?
Because it creates a roadmap. If you try to go from pure noise to a clear image in one jump, the mathematical variance is infinite. It's just too hard. But if I ask you to go from step 1,000 to step 999, just removing a tiny fraction of the noise, that's a solvable problem. You aren't teleporting, you're just taking a step.
You're breaking a massive, impossible problem into 1,000 solvable micro-problems.
Exactly. And that brings us to the reverse process. This is where the neural network comes in. We need an architecture that can look at a noisy image and output a slightly less noisy version.
And they settled on a UNet architecture. For those listening who build these things, that's standard for image segmentation. But it's interesting they chose it here.
It makes perfect sense if you think about the data dimensions. A UNet takes an image, it downsamples it to capture the broad content, the concept of the image, and then upsamples it back. Because the input is a noisy, say, 256 by 256 image, and the output needs to be a noise map of the exact same size, the UNet is ideal. It preserves the spatial structure with those skip connections.
But there's a crucial addition here. The model isn't just seeing the image, it's seeing the time. They inject sinusoidal positional embeddings into the network.
This is vital. Remember, the model is using the exact same weights to clean an image at step 1000, which is pure static, as it is at step 10, which is nearly clean. Those are two totally different tasks.
Right. At step 1000, you're looking for broad shapes. Is there a blob here or there? At step 10, you're fixing fine textures. Is this pixel part of an eyelash or a shadow?
Exactly. If you don't tell the model what time it is, it will try to average those tasks and fail at both. The sinusoidal embeddings work like a frequency timestamp. They project the time step, t, into a high-dimensional vector that gets added to the layers. It effectively tells the unit, hey, we're in the early stages, look for high-frequency noise, or we're in the late stages, look for structural noise.
It's context. It allows one model to be a specialist at 1,000 different levels of noise intensity simultaneously.
Correct.
Okay, let's get to the meat of the math, because this is where the real aha moment happens. We have our unit, we have our noisy image. What exactly are we asking the model to predict?
This is the genius of Ho, Jain, and Abbeel. Theoretically, you might think we should try to predict the clean image, x0, directly, or maybe predict the mean of the previous step. But the math gets messy. You end up dealing with this complex variational lower bound, the ELBO, with KL divergence terms. It's just a nightmare to optimize.
And usually in research, you stick to the rigorous math, but these guys simplified it.
They did. They realized that since we created the noisy image by adding a specific instance of Gaussian noise, let's call it epsilon, we can just ask the model, predict the epsilon.
So don't predict the image, predict the noise that is corrupting the image.
Right. The loss function becomes incredibly simple. It's just the mean squared error between the actual noise we added, which we know because we put it there, and the predicted noise the UNet spits out.
I want to pause here because this is huge. Why is predicting the noise so much easier than predicting the pixel values?
Think about the distribution. If I show you a noisy patch and ask, what's the pixel value underneath? The answer could be anything. It could be a red pixel, a blue one, a sharp edge, a smooth gradient. The variance is just massive. But if I ask, what is the noise? Well, we know the noise is Gaussian. It follows a standard bell curve. We know it has a mean of 0 and a variance of 1.
You're grounding the model. The target is always a standard normal distribution. It's just the magnitude that changes.
Exactly. You are turning an open-ended creative problem, like draw a dog, into a constrained statistical problem, like find the bell curve deviation.
Right.
By minimizing the error on the noise, the model implicitly learns the structure of the data. If it can perfectly identify noise, the only thing left after you subtract it is the signal.
So the UNet looks at a messy image, identifies the static, subtracts it, and what remains is a step closer to the clean image.
Precisely. And this specific parameterization predicting epsilon were shown to be mathematically equivalent to denoising score matching.
Which connects to Langevin dynamics. We need to talk about the foggy mountain analogy because I think it helps visualize the sampling process.
It's the best way to visualize it. Imagine the data distribution, the set of all possible realistic images, is a village at the bottom of a valley. Random noise is the high peaks of a mountain range surrounding it.
And it's foggy. You can't see the village.
You can't see the destination, no. But you can feel the slope under your feet. That slope is the gradient of the log density of the data. When the model predicts the noise, it's essentially calculating which direction is downhill toward the data.
So the iterative process step, 1,000 down to step 0, is just taking small steps down the mountain.
Yes. But here's the critical detail that separates this from just standard gradient descent. Langevin dynamics requires you to add a little bit of fresh noise back in at every single step.
This is the part of the algorithm, I think it's equation 11 in the paper, where they take the denoise step and then add, sigma z, where z is new random noise. Why on earth would you add noise when you are trying to remove it?
If you don't add that noise, the process becomes deterministic. You would just slide down the steepest path to the nearest average image. You'd end up with something that looks like the mean of all dogs. Blurry, generic, completely uninspired.
You'd get the average result.
Right. By injecting fresh noise, you are shaking the system. It prevents the model from settling into a local minimum. It allows the trajectory to explore the landscape. It's the difference between a generic sketch and a highly detailed, specific texture. That noise injection creates the variance to generate sharp, realistic details like fur or grass.
So the noise isn't just an obstacle, it's actually the fuel for diversity. It keeps the dream alive long enough to find a specific, detailed reality.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The noise allows the model to traverse the manifold of real images rather than just collapsing to the center of it.
Let's talk results. When this paper dropped, GANs were the undisputed kings of fidelity. If you wanted a sharp image, you used StyleGAN or progressive DAN. How did DDPM stack up?
It was a shock to the system. They benchmarked on CFAR10, which is a standard Hello World data set for image generation, tiny 32 or 32 by 32 images. They measured the FID score for a shade inception distance.
And lower is better for FID.
Yes. 0 would be perfect. The best GANs were scoring very low. DDPM hit a score of 3.17.
Which, for a non-adversarial model, is insane.
It was unheard of. It matched the quality of progressive GANs, but without any of the training instability. With a GAN, you might train it 10 times and get 10 failures before you get one success. With diffusion, the training objective is just minimizing a regression error. It's convex-ish. It just works. It converges steadily.
But there's a trade-off, right? We have to be honest about the compute.
Oh, absolutely. That's the catch. A GAN generates an image in one forward pass. Boom, done. Milliseconds. A diffusion model, at least as proposed in this paper, requires 1,000 sequential passes through the UNet to generate one image.
So it's 1,000 times slower at inference time?
In the original implementation, yes. It was agonizingly slow. You could go get a coffee while it generated a batch of low-res images.
Yeah.
But the quality and the diversity were so high that the research community basically said, we don't care about the speed. We can fix the speed later. This paradigm is superior.
And they did fix the speed eventually. DDIMs and latent diffusion came later, but this paper established the foundation.
It proved that likelihood-based models could beat GANs. It shifted the whole focus from how do we trick a discriminator to how do we model the gradient of the data distribution.
There's one last concept I want to touch on before we wrap. You mentioned to me earlier that we can look at this not just as image generation, but as progressive decompression.
Yeah, this is a fascinating perspective from the information theory side. Think about a JPEG. It compresses an image by throwing away high-frequency data. When you view it, the computer decodes it.
Sure.
You can view the forward process, the adding noise part, as a form of lossy compression that eventually compresses the image into 0 bits, pure noise. The reverse process is a decompression algorithm.
But it's decompressing from nothing.
It's decompressing from the latent possibility to the data. The model has memorized the statistical structure of the entire data set, the internet, basically. When you give it a random noise seed, you are giving it a key. And as it runs those 1,000 steps, it is progressively decompressing that random key into a specific image based on the rules of reality it learned.
That is wild. It implies that the information for the golden retriever isn't in the noise and it isn't fully in the model. It's in the interaction between the two. The model is a decoder for the probability of the world.
Exactly. The noise provides the specific instance. The model provides the general rules of existence.
So we've gone from ink in water to UNets predicting static, to climbing down a foggy mountain, and finally to decoding the visual reality of the universe.
It's a heck of a journey for one paper.
It really is. And for everyone listening, next time you type a prompt into Midjourney or Stable Diffusion and see that image materialize, remember this. You aren't just watching a collage being pasted together. You are watching a neural network solve a massive thermodynamic equation, reversing entropy step by step to find order in the chaos.
It's physics, disguised as art.
I think that's the perfect place to leave it. We'll drop the link to the paper in the show notes. It's dense, but the math is beautiful if you give it a chance. Thanks for diving in with us.
Thanks for having me.